So let's talk about management, but not in that boring textbook way. This is really a story, a 100-year-long detective story, trying to figure out the secret to what makes a business and the people in it actually tick. I mean, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? For literally over a century, some of the smartest people out there have been obsessed with this. And the answers they came up with have completely changed the way you and I work every single day.
All right, so think of this as our map for the journey. We're going to start way back with the stopwatch-toting efficiency fanatics. Then we'll move into a whole new era where psychology completely changed the game. And finally, we'll land right here, in the present day with big data and super complex systems. It's a wild ride, from the mechanical to the mindful.
Okay, let's hop in a time machine. We're going back to the early 1900s. Factories are popping up everywhere. They're loud, they're exciting. But inside, honestly, it's a mess. Total chaos. The number one problem on everyone's mind was simple. How do we get more stuff made faster? And the first people who tried to solve this, well, they weren't thinking about people. They were thinking like engineers. And that's when this idea called scientific management bursts onto the scene. The core concept was revolutionary for its time. Stop guessing, start measuring. Every single thing. The goal was to take any job and turn it from a craft into a pure science that you could perfect down to the tiniest movement. The main guy behind all this was Frederick Taylor. You could call him the godfather of this whole movement, and he broke it down into 4 super logical principles. First, study every part of a task like a scientist. Second, find the perfect worker for that task. Third, train them and give them incentives. And finally, use science to plan their work so they don't have to think. Taylor truly believed this was the key to finding the single one best way to do absolutely anything. And here's the crazy part. It totally worked. I mean, productivity shot through the roof. But there was a massive downside. The human element was completely ignored. People were just cogs in a giant machine. And that kind of dehumanizing approach, well, it was basically a ticking time bomb. Something had to give. Because, let's be real, you can't treat human beings like robots forever. It just doesn't work. The next wave of thinkers had a huge realization. Maybe the secret to productivity isn't about timing every little motion. Maybe, just maybe, it's about what's going on inside people's heads. So let's jump back to our map here. We are now moving into what's called the behavioral viewpoint. And listen, this wasn't some tiny tweak. Oh no. This was a complete 180-degree turn. The spotlight swung from the task itself right onto the person doing it. You had these pioneers like Mary Parker Follett saying, hey, maybe organizations should be more democratic. And then came the famous Hawthorne studies, which kind of stumbled into one of the biggest discoveries in management history. They found that just paying attention to workers made them more productive. Just the act of showing you care. It was a massive aha moment. A little human connection could actually matter more than the size of a paycheck. Wild, right? And this really gets to the core of the whole thing. Douglas McGregor came up with this brilliant framework, Theory X versus Theory Y. It's basically 2 opposing worldviews. A Theory X manager thinks people are lazy and you have to force them to work. A Theory Y manager believes people actually want to do a good job and you just need to trust them. Which side you fall on? Well, that defines your entire management style. So think about it for a second. Which kind of boss have you had? I bet we've all experienced both. You know, the Theory X micromanager who's always looking over your shoulder, and hopefully the Theory Y leader who trusted you and let you run with it. This isn't just some abstract idea. This is real life for all of us. Okay, so as we get closer to today, things start to get a lot more sophisticated. Management theory gets a system upgrade. And what's interesting is it doesn't just toss out all the old ideas. Instead, it starts to layer new things on top, powerful tools like data analysis, and a much bigger, more connected view of how a business actually fits into the world. Back to our timeline, you can see we're now jumping into the quantitative and contemporary viewpoints. This is where data becomes king, and our understanding of leadership gets a whole lot more complex. So first, let's talk about operations management. The easiest way to think about it is like scientific management, but on steroids. It's still laser-focused on efficiency, but now, instead of just a stopwatch, we have massive amounts of data and crazy powerful computer algorithms to help us.
And this quote just nails it. It wasn't just about making a warm cookie. It was about the entire system to get that warm cookie to your door. obsessing over how to cut delivery time from 40 minutes down to 30, planning every single step. That is operations management in a nutshell. It's a relentless focus on process.
All right, now let's zoom out. The next big idea is the systems viewpoint. This way of thinking says, hey, a company isn't an island. It's more like a living, breathing thing. All the different departments are interconnected, they all have to work together, and the whole organization is constantly being affected by what's happening in the outside world.
And this leads us to maybe one of the most important ideas in modern management, contingency theory. This is a direct shot at Frederick Taylor's old idea of one best way. Contingency theory says, nope, there is no one best way. The right answer always depends. It depends on the person, the project, the environment. It's all about being flexible.
So what does all this mean for a manager today? It means you're not just a person who follows a rule book. You're a problem solver. You've got this big, diverse toolkit filled with ideas from the last 100 years, and your real job is knowing exactly which tool to pull out for which problem.
Okay, so we've covered 100 years of history. Let's pull it all together and think about what's next.
When you boil it all down, the journey looks like this. We started by seeing workers as cogs. Then we realized they were actual human beings with feelings and social needs. And now we see them as crucial parts of a much bigger, more complex system. And the biggest takeaway from all of this? The idea of a best way to manage is always a moving target.
Which brings us to one final huge question. With things like AI and automation totally changing the game, what does the next chapter of management look like? What new theories are we going to need? The only thing we can say for sure is that this story is far from over.